What's up, guys? Today we're going to be checking out some speakers from Atlantic Technology. This is their brand new 8600 series of speakers. So shout out to Atlantic Technology for sending these speakers out for me to review. So we've got their brand new towers, the 8600s, and also the matching center channel as well. So what we're going to do here is talk about the performance in a 2-channel stereo setup and also in a home theater setup, which is what I think these speakers are meant for. Now, as far as the associated gear that we're using for this review, we've got both speakers hooked up to a Hi-Fi Rose RS520, which puts out 250 watts per channel into 8 ohms or in 4 ohms. So there's plenty of power to go around. Now keep in mind that this is not a versus video with the Perlissons against the Atlantic Technologies. The Perlissons are just my reference speakers that I've owned for maybe like a year or two now, and they do measure relatively flat, so they're a very neutral speaker. So that's kind of the baseline that we're going to be using for this video. Now, as far as the Atlantic Technologies in a 2-channel setup, Bill, what are your thoughts on them?
Mid-range forward. These speakers have 2 8-inch woofers, a passive radiator, two mid-range at 5 1/4, and 1 tweeter. So they sound nice. The configuration of the speaker, I don't really care for where they put the tweeter, then the 2 mid-range and the tweeters between those two. So I think it kind of affects the purity of the higher end stuff, the treble.
I think the first song that we listened to was Dominique Fils-Aimé, which was Home, the song that we always listen to. And keep in mind that these are the same like 4 or 5 tracks that we always listen to in all of our speaker reviews. And I think what you had mentioned, that the first thing that you noticed and I noticed as well is that the vocals, the mid-range in the vocals were so pronounced that she sounded like she was maybe a couple feet in front of us.
Right. It sounded like she was, it was booming. Her voice was just booming to the point where one of the characteristics of the song is they have an upright bass, and it sounds real resonant usually, but her voice was actually overshadowing that deeper bass sound.
Not only in that song, but we also listened to Clara. I think it's called Wonderwall. It's like a mashup of Wonderwall and something else. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's a mashup between those two songs, and her vocals as well, just really, really prominent, just really, really front and center. I don't know if it's whatever the crossover they're using, or maybe we're just hearing some resonance from the enclosure, because maybe we're getting a little bit of echo or something like that. Some of that extra resonance, like I said, we're hearing some of the enclosure include itself with the output of the mid-range. That I feel like maybe that's what it is. I don't know what the internals look like on the speaker, but I feel maybe that's kind of what we're hearing.
It's very MIDI with those 8-inch. It's got that you've got the 2 8-inch woofers, and then you've got the passive radiator, and then the 2 mid-range, and you've got that one little tweeter, and it's just getting overpowered.
Yeah.
So all your highs sound a little bit muddy, or just not real bright. And you've got that, they didn't need that extra radiator. They should have put either bigger tweeters in, or not tweeters, but either another tweeter or better mid-range. I don't know. It's got a lot of mid-range, not as much low end as you would think for something with that many woofers.
Yeah, so it's got 2 8s and 2 passive 8s.
Yeah.
So essentially it's kind of like a really big ported speaker. And which we did use the Perlissons in ported mode as well. You can use it in sealed mode or ported. So to keep it even, we use it in ported mode. And for such a small speaker on the Perlissons, it has a considerable amount of bass in those things.
Yeah, it does. I think it's because the way it's ported on the bottom and the way the cabinet is shaped, you actually get a much bigger space for bass expansion for that port. And it really makes a difference.
Now, you would think that the 2 8-inch passive radiators would give you a lot of forcefulness coming directly at you. But, I mean, let's be fair here. I mean, there are some songs that we listen to, Home, and I think the Lenny Kravitz song as well.
It ain't over till it's over.
It's got some pretty good snap to it, for sure. It just didn't have the low-end extension, the real thick bottom end. But what it does, it does have a snappy punch to it. So I will give it that.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a bad sounding speaker, but and one song that I listened to that Shane didn't, just because I always listen to this, is the Cowboy Junkies live Trinity sessions, where they basically performed this song on stage live, and they were all arrayed around like one mic. They have individual instrument mics as well, but it's a really ambient sound that it captures the sound of the theater they're in. And the pearlescents were much more dynamic. You could see that, you could feel the space, hear the space much more so than with these. I think because of the way the high end is, stuff is not quite as dynamic, or maybe a little flatter. Also, with all that heavy mid-range, it sounds more compressed, so you're not getting the big wide spatial imaging on the speakers.
Pearlescents definitely had a more three-dimensional soundstage to them. I would say that the soundstage, if we're using the speakers as our focal point, the Pearlescents are maybe like a foot or so behind the speaker. The soundstage is a foot or so behind the speakers, whereas on the Atlantic Technologies, I felt that they were maybe like a foot or two in front of the speakers. So, I mean, if you want a more, I guess maybe more intimate sound, especially with the Cowboy Junkies or Clara or Home, if you want them to feel like they're in the room with you, like right in front of you, getting a personal concert, then I think the Atlantic Technologies definitely do that for you. But if you want to feel more of the room or hear more of the room with the speakers, then the Pearlescents are going to definitely convey that a little bit better, I think.
The song "It Ain't Over Till It's Over" is one of our favorites to listen to because it was so well produced. It can make any speaker sound good. It's got a really wide sound stage, like every note is very crystal clear. It sounded great on both sets of speakers.
The Atlantic Technologies, what are they rated at? 30 hertz to 23 hertz?
23
kilohertz.
Yep.
And then the Pearlescents are to 32 kilohertz. So it's a reverse on the top end there. And I would say that, I don't know if we can hear that high or not, but they both seem to have that wraparound effect, especially with that song, "It Ain't Over Till It's Over." And we've heard this song a million times on dozens of different speakers. Yeah. And both of these definitely have that really big soundstage with that specific song. Now, with the Rolling Stones' "Sympathy for the Devil," since we're talking about that forward soundstage, there are, I believe, the maracas, which are playing over on the left speaker. And that sounds like it was almost at like arm's length away. So it sounded like it was pretty close to where we were sitting. Whereas on the Pearlescents, it was kind of like off, behind the speakers, off to the side. So you can feel the stage was wider. And, just on the Atlantic Technologies, they were kind of just like right in front of us.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think that spatial imaging, right? So I think the Pearlescents give you a much more realistic picture of where they were during recording or on stage. The Atlantic Technologies definitely feel like they're like sitting on your lap, like right there in front of you.
And I think that's, you had mentioned that probably because of that prominent mid-range is that it's really just projecting itself into the room. Whereas on the Pearlescents, it's very natural, very neutral sounding, and it just sounds more spacious. Well, maybe you like a more forward sound stage. Maybe that's what you like.
I mean, this is, as we always say during our reviews, this is, a subjective thing.
Yeah.
We happen to like the same kind of sounds, and we generally tend to agree on our reviews as far as the quality of a speaker, like a particular characteristic.
I mean, we did get some pretty good detail. We were listening to
Poem of Chinese Drums.
We got some pretty good micro detail on the top end. So every time they would strike the drum head, you can hear the reverberation against the enclosure of the drum itself.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a slight little twang on the top end there, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that resonance that after you strike it just kind of keeps vibrating. You hear that.
"Sympathy for the Devil," the guitar solo with Keith Richards.
I thought that on the Atlantic Technologies, it sounded almost like it was distorting.
Yeah, it was like borderline really kind of bright.
Yeah.
Or more brighter than the Pearlescents for sure.
Yeah, which I think it was working the hell out of that tweeter.
Yeah.
And the Pearlescents have, I think they've got I don't know if it's a bigger tweeter, but it's not positioned the same way. I don't know. It's something about it. Just got a better sound on high end.
Now, there are some settings on the back of the Atlantic Technology, so if you want to dampen it a little bit, you can do that as well. So if you have it behind a screen or something, you want to boost the top end, or if you want to use it more in its neutral position, you can change that as well. So there's some settings behind the Atlantic Technology speaker that you can kind of tailor the sound if you want. Or if you have, tone controls on your AVR or processor or preamp, you can also use that to tone it down as well. Now, this is we're just speaking about this only in 2-channel terms, but I have been using this for a mini home theater, just a 3.0 setup. And it does come with a center channel as well. It's got the same mid-range in the same tweeter as the LCRs do. And I think in home theater is where these speakers do kind of shine because of that more forward, heavy, mid-range presence.
It sounds like that's what they were made for, honestly, to me.
Atlantic Technology has been kind of known for their home theater speakers, because I've owned Atlantic Technology speakers back in like early 1999 with their THX System 2300, the THX System 350 and 450. So I was pretty excited to get these in. These do not have the THX certification that those other speakers do, although I think a lot of the characteristics from those THX certifications probably have made their way over to these speakers as well. Because whereas we got that extra low-end response from the Perlissons, I think these speakers, since they don't dig deep, quite as deep, you probably have to use these, or meant to use these, with a subwoofer. Mm-hmm. And I did have them paired up with a pair of REL 12-inch subs for a lot of my living room home theater testing. And, adding the subs in takes care of a lot of that missing bottom end for sure. And then, with that really heavy mid-range presence as well that comes through in the center channel, and it really projects itself into the room. So in those movies that you have a hard time hearing dialogue, like Christopher Nolan movies, mm-hmm. It doesn't become so much of an issue, which, with that speaker, with the Atlantic Technology speaker, that really does help out with the dialogue. And it keeps the vocal timbre matching really well with the LCRs. So I think for home theater duty, these speakers are really what they're meant for, is home theater. For critical 2-channel listening, I wouldn't, unless you real analytical about your music, if you just want to enjoy your music and just crank out with it, I feel like these speakers are good for that. But if you really want to get down to some really analytical nuance in these recordings,
two channel,
yeah, just 2-channel
sit in
only.
your chair and just listen deep. Yeah, these are more of an all-purpose for that. Like, I would definitely go with something else, especially at that price point.
Home theater duties, I think these Atlantic Technologies definitely shine 100%. 2-channel duties, still very good, but there are definitely some shortcomings with speakers that cost. I know this comparison is obviously it's a little bit different, because maybe not fair, because the Perlissons are $8,000 a pair, and these Atlantic Technologies are $6,000 a pair. Right. So you would expect an $8,000 speaker to probably perform a little bit better, and it does sound different. We'll just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. These weren't bad, the Atlantic Technologies, but I think they would really excel in the home theater arena. Now,
at the time of this video, the 8600 ILRs cost $6,000 a pair, and the 8600 IC is $2,000 each. Now, this is a huge center channel speaker.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
It's got 2 8-inch woofers in it, 2 5.25-inch mid-range, and also what?
A 1-inch soft dome tweeter.
1-inch soft dome tweeter. So this is a serious sounding center channel speaker.
Yeah, it's a big boy. It's going to take up a lot of space, but it's going to sound really massive.
It's pretty efficient too. It's a 93 dB sensitivity. It has the 93 dB sensitivity. So you don't need the beefiest amplifier or AVR to juice this thing up. Now, as an entire package for home theater, I think this is where these speakers do shine. Like we said earlier, subjectively speaking, that's where we would probably use these speakers for 2-channel listening. Maybe not so much, but home theater, 100%.
Yep.
So it's got that lineage of their older series of speakers that I'm used to hearing from way back in the early 90s, early 2000s, up until today. The only thing it's missing is that THX certification. The build quality on these speakers are...
very nice, very solid, really pretty speaker.
Yeah, great looking speakers.
Yeah.
We have the black finish. It also does come in white. So if you want to have it be more maybe living room friendly.
Yeah, very classy, very real high quality build. You grab hold of that speaker to move it, it's solid.
Yeah, it's got a real kind of elegant look to it. And you can tell just by the size, especially from the LCRs and the center channel, they kind of mean business in your home theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, those are our thoughts on the Atlantic Technology 8600 series of speakers. Have you heard these speakers? And if so, what are your thoughts on them? How do you think they perform? Leave a comment down below and let us know. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video if you found it useful, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you again in the next video.
See you guys next time.